Folks, welcome back to So Bad It's Good. We were lucky enough to have our next guest on before the Sean Diddy Combs trial started. And you can follow along with this in the excellent podcast Bad Rap, The Case Against Diddy. They've been doing multi-episodes every week. They also did episodes pre-trial as well to kind of give you context for everything. And it is, we're in the finish line. You know, the jury is deliberating right now, and this could come down at any second because I believe I learned from the podcast that they said they were expected to be done before the 4th of July holiday. So to walk us through all of the developments recently in this case, we have the amazing ABC News legal contributor, Brian Buckmire, back with us. Brian, welcome to the show.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you for that great introduction.
I mean, no, you really have walked us through and walked me through, which seems like a very complicated case that, as we're at the finish line, gets more complicated in my eyes. And I think we're all kind of wondering how this jury is going to process all of this information and what's going to happen. Now, what day are we into the deliberation? We're talking Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so they're done for the day, right?
Oh no, they're still going. It's 4 p.m. Eastern time, and the judge has said that if they want to go past 5 o'clock, they're more than welcome to do so. What I would say is today is the first full day of deliberations, but if you want to go by days, I guess it'd be day two. Yesterday, they were only deliberating for about half the day or two-thirds because they were given the case. What I mean by given the case, they had finished the jury instructions, the judge explaining to them how they're supposed to consider the evidence, what their job is. They were given the case around noon yesterday, took a lunch break, and then began. So 1.5 days, 2 days, depending on how you want to count it.
And isn't it true within like the first 70 minutes, there was already a question from one of the jurors in regards to the case?
I would say probably less question, more of a statement, because the foreperson wrote a letter to the judge saying that one of the jurors we believe to be juror number 25, who we know to be a white male with a PhD in molecular biology, according to the foreperson, and what was written is this person is not following the rules, or not following the instructions of the court. What that means is anyone's guess. I can tell you with my legal background, there are certain ways that a judge informs the jury as to how they're supposed to consider information, but that could still be any number of things that they're doing. But after that note, it seems like it became business as usual because at least at the time of recording now, 4 p.m. Eastern time on New York, we've only had about 4 other notes, 5 in total since then.
So, I mean, what amazes me, you've been covering this from the very beginning, and are you ready to go? If you get a text right now saying there's a verdict in, like, do you know exactly? I mean, do you rush down there? I mean, because we're at the end here. Are you ready?
So for those who are watching, I guess, I have my earpiece on me at all times. I am told that I need to be within a certain distance of a camera at all times, because if I'm in line waiting for something and a verdict comes in, then it's going to be a mad dash. I have my nice, comfortable smoking shoes on that I can run in because I have to be at a certain floor in a certain part of the building at all times.
Yeah, we need you there. ABC should be buying you all the meals for your coverage on this. I mean, I know we're making light of this, and this is obviously a very, very serious subject matter. I was just wondering, talking to you at the beginning, what were the big surprises for you covering this case that was unveiled from the prosecution and the defense during this trial?
So I think going from the serious to the mundane to the somewhat shocking and surprising that we can maybe kind of joke about was just the extent of, and I still say alleged because we haven't come to a conviction as yet, but the extent of the alleged abuse when it came to Cassie. I think we had an idea. I think we had an inkling, an understanding from that Intercontinental video, but seeing the bruises, hearing the testimony, seeing her respond, because I'm in the courtroom watching her. I'm seeing her walk past us each time she has to take the stand to testify. I'm watching her now husband and father of now 3 children sitting 2 rows in front of me, reacting to this testimony. I'm seeing Sean Combs watching and reacting. Seeing that whole kind of orchestra of testimony and people reacting in real time, that was probably the most shocking to me. Yeah.
I mean, the amazing amount of strength that Cassie has to be able to do that in front of all of those people and Sean Diddy Combs. I mean, that really, I don't think is spoken about enough. We also had the Jane Doe, and she was speaking. Now, what's difficult and how the jury is going to process this information was that even leading up to the trial, he was paying for a lot of her lifestyle. And I thought that was something that the defense was trying to use, saying, oh, listen, she's accepting money from him. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Jane has this quote unquote love contract where she's paid $10,000 a month for her rent. She's also has her attorneys being paid for, even though they are representing Jane as she's testifying against Sean Combs. And I know when this came out, this was all like a big shock to people. But I'll say this. As a defense attorney, if a client came to me and said, hey, I'm being accused by an ex-lover, ex-girlfriend, ex-wife, what do you want to say? And these are the allegations, and there's kind of sort of a part of it where I'm paying for things, I would say, as a defense attorney said here, keep paying. Because you don't want to give the perception of I cut this person off the second they made allegations against me. Because that's far worse than the head scratcher that we're all going through of, wait, he's still paying? Because if he's still paying, you can make arguments. You can say, hey, it's not about the allegations. It's about love. It's about this. It's about whatever. But if he cuts her off, whole other situation. What I'm curious about is July 1st, and the jury is deliberating. Is he still paying for July's rent, or did he cut her off now? That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about that as well. I mean, to me, when I was, first learned about this case and reading everything, I thought in my mind this was an open and shut case, and there seems to be a lot of now discourse around the RICO charges, the racketeering and the trafficking, and if they will be able to prove this of Sean Diddy Combs. And one of your guests was saying, like, listen, I think it's going to be guilty on some counts and innocent on others. Is there a place where you've come down after watching this trial?
Yeah, so before the jury notes, and so I'll give you two mindsets, right? Before the jury notes, I thought there's going to be a difficult time that the jury is going to have to dismantle the idea of Sean Combs having an actual enterprise and the components of a criminal enterprise. And so for me, I thought maybe, and I even throw out the number of 10 to 2, 9 to 3 to convict on the racketeering conspiracy, but at least a few holdouts. And I think there's a potential for a mistrial or a hung jury for that racketeering conspiracy, just because of some of the complexities of their criminal enterprise, not the predicate acts, because that's a separate issue. And what I mean by that is, even on the verdict sheet, you have to find that Sean Combs was part of a criminal enterprise and there was a racketeering conspiracy. And then you're supposed to go to the predicate acts, the arson, the sex trafficking, the bribery, the drug distribution. And so I thought those would be easier than the criminal enterprise. But this is how my thought process has changed since the notes. We know that note, was it 3 or 4? Was the jury asking for the definition of drug distribution. And that's when my mind started to change. Because if you follow the verdict sheet in its order, which most jurors do, no one has a degree in how to read a verdict sheet, you just kind of follow in an order.
Yeah.
You don't get to the idea of drug distribution until you resolve the issue as to whether or not there's a criminal enterprise. So if you're asking about drug distribution, criminal enterprise may already been a foregone conclusion. They may have already agreed to that already. And so now I'm thinking maybe they've already made a decision and they're just looking at the details.
Interesting. That really is interesting. Also, I found fascinating in one of your episodes, you had a former, I think, defense attorney that had once represented Harvey Weinstein. And you had this really interesting point about consent and how consent is depending on the generation that you were raised in, is that you want younger jurors that understand the importance of consent as opposed to older jurors. And I thought that was such an interesting thing that I had never thought about. And you were talking about your own family. And I was just thinking that as well, is that, trying to explain this to my dad would be a very different conversation than somebody my own age.
Oh yeah, and even in my households, the joke is that I was a tough child to raise, so my parents had to wait 12 years to have a next one.
I can see it. I can see it.
Between talking to my mother, and I've been promised always to never say her age on air, but she's slightly older than me, and then talking to me, who's 36, and then talking to my brother, who is 25, we have wildly different ideas of consent. Like, again, not to put too much of my business out there, I'm 36. You can do the math as to when I was 20.
Which, by the way, there's a great part of the podcast where you realize you're 36. You're like, I'm I'm 36. And then
Yeah,
like
yeah,
there was a moment there in the podcast.
yeah. Still, I still go through that. But I make the joke of like, I grew up in a time where we would go to nightclubs or parties, and it was socially acceptable to step behind a woman and dance, touching them close to close, and that was perfectly fine. I described that to my 25-year-old brother, and he loses his mind. He's like, that's sexual harassment. That's not consent. And I was like, hey, man, the 2000s were a different time. What can I say? And so even like our difference of what we can perceive to be consent is different. But what I really liked about Donna Rotuno is she brought up this issue of boy moms, which has always been this kind of thing that we talk about, but not out loud as defense attorneys, where we like for sexual assault or rape cases to get mothers of sons because they have the comfort and the ability to criticize other women because it's people from my tribe, people from my group, but they also worry and are concerned about people within their group, being women, lying about men doing things because they have sons that they want to protect. And for cases like this, I think, and Donna confirmed it, boy moms are often the best ones you want as a defense attorney.
Yeah, I mean, and even studying Diddy's relationship with his mom is a very interesting thing, which you started off the show talking about a little bit. The defense did not call any witnesses. They presented new evidence or evidence of some sort, but they didn't call any witnesses when it came to their defense. What do you think was behind that?
So I think it depends on the nature of the case. And I know a lot of people thought like, oh, no defense means that he must be guilty. No. When it comes to a trial, the burden is always on the prosecution to prove the thing is what they say it to be. Trafficking, RICO conspiracy, transportation to engage in prostitution. But if they can't prove that, there's nothing for the defense to put on as a witness, at least in their mindset, to try to rebut that. Let's try to do something simpler. Where if it was, if I have to prove to you that I went to law school, that I have a degree, right? That's my job to do. It's not your job to do that. There's probably very little that you could do right now to prove or disprove that I have a law degree. Now, if I simply say, you know what, I have a ring from a school and I use big words, I went to law school, you'd be like, well, what evidence do I need to put on to discredit Brian? He has a ring and he uses big words. Like, that's not enough to prove his case. You win, right? Because the burden's on me. And that's the same idea for the defense, or like, in their mind at least, they haven't put on enough information. And the rules of this game is I don't have to prove it. I simply have to disprove that they proved anything. And that's what they're doing. Now, the dirty secret or the strategy is they're probably worried about taking one step forward and two steps back. And what I mean by
Yeah.
that is putting on a witness where they say, okay, they're going to say this one great thing. And then the witness testifies about the 20 times that Sean Combs beat up Cassie. And they're like, maybe we don't want to add that to the trial.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think it's this actually made news, even though it wasn't a surprise to me, is that Diddy didn't testify, and nor did I think he ever would. But that still made like headlines of him not testifying, which is just to your point. You know, that could really set everything so far back that it's better just to be quiet, and I think that's when it becomes. And what your podcast does a brilliant job at going through is that really this does become this game. You know, you almost have to desensitize yourself to the horrors, and we start to rationalize certain things that we shouldn't be rationalizing. But it becomes that, you know, and he has some of the best defense lawyers, and he's had it throughout his entire career. So they're, you know, I mean, they're doing such. I mean, is there things that you admire about his defense and the way they've proceeded through this trial?
Yeah, I think in the ways in which they have highlighted text messages, information, and facts to say, and I think Mark Ignifilo, he and I have very styles in terms of closing arguments. I would have done it how he did it, but there were pieces of it that I would admire of saying that this is a tale of two different trials or two different stories, that the facts say one thing and that the government is giving their interpretation of it in a way that they perceive to be false. And I think they, as the defense, do a better job of having the common person's belief or stereotype and then saying, this is what it is. The best example I would give is, even though they didn't have to talk about the rape of Cassie, it's not one of the predicate acts. They said that Cassie had to make up the story about being raped by Sean Combs because that was the night that her now husband called and she had slid back and slept with an ex. And they presented it as guys, we've heard the story before, right? Someone sleeps with their ex, and their current person finds out about it, and they create a lie. Now, this is a very big lie, but this is a thing that we've all heard about. And I think that makes it easier to convince people if you're convincing them of things that they know can be true or tend to be true, and you're just adding in the facts of this case. It's easier to convince people that way. And I thought that was a good use of trying to argue their case.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to believe that somebody, Cassie in her testimony was like, I just didn't want him angry. I would do whatever he wants because the whole point was, I don't want him to be angry. I don't want to be hit. I don't want to. And so she became subservient in so many ways. Why do people have such a hard time with women and the concept of them being controlled, and like just the fact of, if you're in a relationship, you don't want your partner to be upset, so you're going to potentially do things that are so far out of your comfort zone, but you're pleasing the person that is essentially kind of like your master. And like, why do you think people have a really hard time with that notion?
I think it actually goes beyond this notion. It goes beyond like every notion. I even hear it when people say, well, if I was arrested, I would tell the truth if I was innocent. I wouldn't do this. I think we as humans, the only way we can understand the world around us is by putting ourselves in the center. And so I think like people struggle with what Cassie is saying is because they're saying, well, if I was in this situation, I would not do this. If I
Yeah.
was arrested and innocent, I would not do what this person is doing. If I was in a relationship with Sean Combs and he was beating me, I would not do what Cassie's doing. If I was in a relationship with Sean Combs and he was flying me on Spirit Airline to go do freak offs, I wouldn't get on the plane. And so I think people do that. And then because someone is doing something different, they then think, well, that couldn't be possible.
Yeah.
But we are all different. We have different upbringings. We have different parents. We have different socioeconomic stuff. Like there's so much about how we grew up that creates who we are today. And I don't think people realize how different we are from our fellow humans just based on the different environmental and social differences of how we can all be susceptible to these things. And even I think we lie to ourselves a little as well that we would not be susceptible to these things as other people are as well.
Yeah, no, completely. Also, since you are in that courtroom, what is Diddy's demeanor? We see courtroom drawings, which, I mean, I hope I never have to have a courtroom drawing done of myself. Those are wild to look at.
Yeah.
But like, what is his demeanor? Is there, is he smiling at times? Like, is he angry at times? Does he go through a range of emotions?
Definitely a range of emotions. And I would say during the trial, again, depending on who's testifying, he's happy, he's proud, especially when some of the former assistants came on and like showered him with, this was a hard job, but I learned so much. It was like going to business school. Like you can see that he's proud of that, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
there are times when, especially some of these sex workers or the alleged victims, like Cassie or Jane, are testifying and they're talking about horrific incidences of violence. And you can see that he disagrees with that. Sometimes sitting back in his chair, like it seems like a little frustrated kind of thing. But I will say that during Mark Agnifalo's closing arguments, and even parts of AUSA, Slavic, and Comey's, he was nervous. You can see his leg twitching, his hand kind of like tapping, him shifting in his seat, nervous. And I say that just to give the color of the court. I don't say that to suggest that nerves mean that you're guilty. There are plenty of people who I've represented and were found not guilty. And I truly believe they were innocent and they were just as nervous. I was actually telling the joke to one of the medical contributors about this very topic, about how nervous they were. And I said, you know what? I've held the hands of about a dozen people who have had their lives decided by a judge or a jury. And they are probably some of the most nervous people,
yeah.
shaking, hands sweating. And then I threw in the joke, and please don't send this to my wife. And I would say, I even held my wife's hand during her C-section. And she wasn't half as nervous as some of these people, probably because her life wasn't in my hand, but that's besides the point.
Yeah.
But people get nervous at this, and he was very
Yeah.
nervous.
You had an interesting moment during the trial, and you talked about it on the podcast briefly, is that you stepped outside, and wouldn't you know, Kanye West was pulling up,
Yeah.
and he was in there, and then even an ABC News contributor was like, "Are you here to support Diddy?" And he shook his head, yes. And I thought that was interesting. Was Bianca with him?
No, so Kanye was by himself, and the interesting part about it, and I'm not sure how much we can say about it with the court order and stuff like that. The case is getting to an end, but I will give you the breadcrumbs and I will allow you and your listeners to put it together. Kanye West shows up, I want to say either the last day of Jane on the stand or the day after Jane is on the stand, and she talks about
The Vegas
go,
testimony?
the Vegas testimony. So you see where I'm going, right?
Yep.
Going on an airplane with a very famous, prominent, high profile rapper to go to their girlfriends. And Tenny Garagos on cross examination kept asking, are you saying girlfriend or wife? Wife or girlfriend? She kept saying girlfriend. Supposedly, this birthday party was for the girlfriend on January of 2024 in Las Vegas. Now there is wide reporting of a very famous rapper with his wife, who, because of her attire, made headlines in January in Vegas. And then all of a sudden, Kanye West shows up the next day. And so it wasn't just Kanye showing up. It was, is he going to tell us something about something we just heard about? And so that was kind of like the big question mark for us all.
And he's allowed in the courtroom when somebody like that shows up?
So this was a part of the issue, right? The day that he came, he was not allowed in the actual courtroom. Christian Combs, the son of Sean Combs, was trying to get him on the list in order for him to be into the actual courtroom. Now, there are multiple lists, right? There are lists if you are an attorney in the courtroom and you can sit in a specific row. There are lists if you're with the press and you sit in certain rows. The family of the victims have a list. So when Cassie, for example, comes in, her husband can sit in court as well. The attorneys have a list. The prosecutors have a list. The family of Sean Combs has a list. And so we know that Christian Combs was trying to get Kanye West on the list, but he never made the list, meaning that someone must have said, no, he's not coming in. Who that is, still a big mystery, but we know there's a big scramble in terms of the court staff saying, we don't want him in the main courtroom. They ended up putting him in the overflow room, so 2 floors below where he got to see the case through a screen. He had Christian Combs with him, his security, sitting in front of a TV screen, just pointing out this. And when the media kind of knew where he was and flooded in, and it got to like 15, 20 people, because I was like one of the first 5 people, but when it got to 15, 20 people, they got up and left, only staying in the building for about 20, 25 minutes.
Wow. Didn't Kanye just produce Diddy's son's EP?
Yeah. A number of songs. I think some of them talking directly about this case as well. Some very interesting lines, nonetheless.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. We've got about 7 more minutes, but I did want to ask a couple things, and I think this is such great clarification. A lot of the people, when the jury instructions, or not the jury instructions, but when they were interviewing jury members for the jury, there was a litany of famous people's names said, 2 of them being Mike Myers and Michael B. Jordan. And I remember when those names came out, people were like, oh my God, they were at the freak-offs. Oh my God, Mike Myers, Austin Powers was at the freak-offs. You clarified this once again in your podcast. And what did you say about both of these gentlemen?
Yeah, so none of them had anything to do with like freak offs and whatnot. And if it's okay, this is how real this is right now. I'm going to walk and talk with you because there's a new note and we've got to get in place. But I'm going to continue this interview.
Okay, this is what a professional he is. I'm going to get you a salad now. I'm going to pitch in for your salad with ABC. Wild. So there's a new jury note of them asking the judge a question.
Yes, new jury note. I am moving to where I'm supposed to be, but I'm going to talk to you as I do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David Muir in the background, I see on TV.
Yeah. And if I get where the note is, I will report on it live here with you. But to answer
and if you need to hop off, you can tell this is your thing is way more important, obviously. So just, disconnect.
No.
But anyways, Mike Myers and Michael B. Jordan. Michael B. Jordan dated Cassie at one point, right?
Yes. So dated Cassie at one point, and also there was an issue of Mike Myers. So don't forget, one of the allegations here are forced labor. And so one of the assistants had worked with Mike Myers and then with Sean Combs. And so the government was trying to make it seem like, well, you worked in this industry, you worked in this arena, and why was it so much more difficult to work for Sean Combs than it is Mike Myers? And I made the comment of like, hey, with all due respect to Mike Myers, he's my fellow Canadian, especially today on Canada Day. Shout out to him for that. But like Sean Combs has multiple businesses. He's a lot going on. I would assume just based on what they do that there's a lot more to do for Mike Myers than is for Sean Combs. And so I don't think that comparison really works. And then for Michael B. Jordan, the issue was, well, Cassie isn't being controlled by Sean Combs because she's able to go and date whoever she wants. And so that's why we heard these names come out. It wasn't that they were part of any kind of freak offs or anything like that.
Yeah, no, but we live in such a conspiratorial society that people want to believe, like, oh my God, Mike Myers of all people were out there. So when they put those names out, the audience just kind of runs with it, sadly. As you know, as a betting man, I mean, I don't know if you can say where you think this will go, but what is the worst case scenario and the best case scenario for Diddy at this point?
I think at this point, best case scenario is not found guilty of any trafficking or RICO conspiracy. Because I think he's going to go down on the transportation to engage in prostitution. Each one of those is a max of 10 years in prison. Worst case scenario would be found guilty of any of the trafficking because of the fact that it's through force, fraud, or coercion. That's a minimum of 15 years to life, and the RICO conspiracy is a maximum of life. And so I'm not comparing these two for any other reasons, but just to like look at jail time. R. Kelly in the Eastern District of New York, which is in Brooklyn, he got 30 years for the RICO conspiracy and sex trafficking. And don't forget, that involved minors. And so you're looking at a lot of time if Sean Combs is found guilty of any of the top, of any of the first count, which is racketeering conspiracy, or the second or the fourth, which would be the sex trafficking.
But even on the low end, it would be at least 10 years.
Yeah, and it could be consecutive, meaning like 5 and 5 years. I don't think you'll get the max 10, but yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, have you gotten the note yet?
We have not gotten the note yet. Have we seen a note yet, guys? No. Give me
So
one
man,
second. I'm
this
not
is
sure
your
if,
daily thing. I mean, this is wild that you do this on a daily basis.
yeah, this is me sitting down in a chair. I'm going to just check my email real quick, so I apologize.
Um,
If I have the note, then I can tell you guys it now.
and if not, we will be letting you go because you have much more important work to be doing. But we'll just hold for 1 second as we wind down.
All I have is the jury has sent back a note. This is the sixth note since deliberations began more than 12 hours ago. The attorneys and prosecutors have reconvened in the courtroom. So we do not know what it is as yet, but this is the sixth note. We are getting close to 5 o'clock. If this is a note of, I would say this, if this is a jury note of note, sorry to use note so many times, we might be deliberating into tomorrow. The judge did say that they can end at 5 o'clock, but they have an option to go further. If they're not close to getting to a verdict, I don't think they're going to stay. But if at 5 o'clock they say, let's stay, they could be around the corner of getting a verdict. But if I'm the defense attorney, I say whatever note they send out and whatever thing they want to read. The last note they sent out took them almost 2 or 3 hours to get the materials to them. Could be the same thing here. We could possibly be looking at a verdict tomorrow. Don't forget, Wednesday is a new Friday because they should be off on Thursday and they're definitely off on Friday. I don't know if anyone wants to come back after the 4th of July weekend for this. So might be a late
Well,
one tomorrow.
Thank you for all of your work. I mean, guys, the podcast, we're put all the information. You can listen to the entire, this huge piece of work that debuted on March 26th. Leave it a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I know that seems like a small thing, but it's an easy, quick way. So this podcast can continue to move up the charts as we tell this very important story. Brian Buckmire, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate talking with you again.
No problem. Sorry to cut you guys short, but have a great one.
No, have a good one, man. Bye.
Goodbye.